Humanity, after defeating a galactic invasion in Earth's orbit, not only survived but became a symbol of a new era among the stars. By building a hybrid fleet and gathering scattered worlds, Earth began transforming chaos into a chance for rebirth. Instead of destruction, humanity unleashed an invitational storm, a surge of freedom, equality, and the shared fight for survival. While the old empires wove conspiracies in the shadows, new arc stations rose from the ruins of ancient wars, and Earth's name grew louder. Now, in the heart of the galaxy, everyone knew, you cannot underestimate humanity twice. The second time would be the last. Stay with us if you want to see how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. Grand Commander Zoltak of the Vortian Imperial Fleet stood at the heart of the command chamber, 14 of his eye stalks fixated on the holographic image of Earth, while 2 remained trained on his gathered war council. The tiny blue planet rotated slowly, enshrouded by a ragged halo of satellites and orbital debris. What a pathetic sight, he rumbled, his voice vibrating through the vaulted hall. The war masters and senior officers chuckled, their chitinous bodies shifting with amusement. So this is Earth, Zoltak said, narrowing his main optical cluster. This species calls themselves humans, correct? Science Officer Drexa, standing by the main console, bowed her scaled head. Yes, Commander. Carbon-based bipeds, average height of 1.7 standard units. Technologically primitive by our metrics. They've only barely achieved interplanetary travel within their system. War Master Klovac snorted derisively, sending a gust of air through his nasal cavities that made nearby junior officers flinch. Look at them. Their largest soldiers would barely reach my knee joint. A ridiculous species to consider a threat. The chamber echoed with laughter, the walls vibrating from the deep, resonant tones. Even Zoltak allowed himself a chuckle. Conquering Earth had been on the Imperial agenda for decades, ever since their long-range scouts discovered the resource-rich world on the distant galactic rim. The humans had no inkling of the storm that was about to descend upon them. Their military capabilities? Zoltak asked, lifting an arm to silence the room. Drexa tapped on her datapad, the hologram shifting to display primitive images of tanks, jets, and naval vessels. Projectile weapons, some directed energy prototypes, basic nuclear capabilities, but nothing beyond standard fission fusion bombs. They've yet to master quantum shielding or gravitic weaponry. Klovac bared his mandibles. Their entire global military couldn't dent one of our scout ships. Zoltak nodded thoughtfully but did not dismiss the subject. And yet, intelligence suggests we exercise caution. Silence fell. Zoltak rarely invoked caution. The War Council leaned in, instincts sharpening. Caution? Klovac scoffed. From where? What threat could these tiny creatures pose? Zoltak gestured to a shadowy figure who had been lurking near the chamber's periphery. Nexera, the chief intelligence officer, stepped forward. Her translucent blue skin shimmered faintly, and her 6 glowing eyes betrayed an unsettling calm. We have monitored their communications for 30 cycles, Nexera said, her voice soft but cutting. Their fiction reveals a concerning pattern. Fiction? Klovac barked, incredulous. You're worried about their stories? They have an entire genre dedicated to scenarios where they defeat superior alien forces. They call it HFY humanity, fuck yeah. The War Council erupted again in laughter. Only Zoltak and Nexera remained grave. It reflects a mindset, Nexera continued, one that envisions overcoming impossible odds. Throughout their history, they have occasionally lived up to this narrative. Zoltak pondered this. Your recommendation? Standard invasion protocol, but with increased reconnaissance. I suggest capturing specimens for direct study before full mobilization. Zoltak's decision came swiftly. Klovac, prepare a capture team. 3 humans. Different regions. Klovac thumped his chest with a primary claw. As you command. As the council dispersed, Zoltak approached Nexera privately. You truly believe these humans might be dangerous? He asked. Nexera's eyes dimmed slightly. I believe underestimating any species is the first step toward defeat. Zoltak snorted, but found himself turning back to the hologram of Earth with something he hadn't expected to feel. Curiosity. 3 cycles later, the captured humans were secured aboard the Vortian flagship. Zoltak stared at them through the transparent containment fields, studying each specimen carefully. One was a female military officer from a place called the United States. Another, a darker-skinned male guerrilla fighter from a region known as Congo. The third, an older male, a retired soldier from Russia. They're even smaller up close, Zoltak muttered. They're not intimidated, Nexera observed. In fact, they seem amused. Have they been cooperative? Zoltak asked. Klovac stepped forward, sporting a fresh scar across his mandible ridge. The Russian killed one of our guards during capture. Bare hands. Zoltak's eye stalk straightened in surprise. The female disabled the tracking systems on the capture vessel before we subdued her, Nexera added. The Congolese fighter led our team into an ambush. 2 scouts lost. 5 casualties for 3 humans, Zoltak murmured. Unprecedented. The female human, seemingly aware of their conversation, crossed her arms, and called out through the containment field. "You guys talk real funny. Those translator gadgets working okay?" Startled, Zoltak stared at her. The human smiled grimly. "You can hear us?" he demanded. "Those devices on your throats glow when you speak," the female said. It wasn't hard to figure out. Nexra's lipless mouth twitched in what might have been admiration. "What do you want from us?" the human asked. "If it's invasion you're planning, you might want to reconsider." Klovak laughed. "Your planet's defenses are laughable. Your weapons are sticks against starfire." The human woman smiled again, and this time, the expression sent an involuntary shiver down Zoltak's spine. "Because humans don't fight fair," she said. "We never have." Zoltak leaned closer. "Explain." "We're not the biggest, fastest, or strongest species on Earth. But we're the apex predators. You know why?" "Enlighten us," Nexra said before Zoltak could dismiss the human. The Russian added, his voice rough and heavily accented, "Because we're mean. We don't give up. We don't forget. And we hold grudges." "You're outgunned and outnumbered," Klovak said scornfully. The Congolese fighter spoke, calm and steady. "My great-grandfather fought with sticks against men with machine guns. They called it hopeless. But we're still here." The colonizers left. Zoltak found himself growing uneasy. "What else have you learned, Nexra?" he demanded. "They have extraordinary endurance," Nexra said. "Pain tolerance beyond projections. And they're always seeking vulnerabilities. They're planning an escape," Zoltak concluded. The female human grinned. "Of course we are. Wouldn't you?" Before he could respond, alarms blared through the ship. Emergency lights bathed the deck in red. "What's happening?" Zoltak barked into his communicator. "Security breach on Deck 7. Earth vessels approaching. They're attacking." "Impossible," Klovak roared. The female human smiled again. "Took them long enough to track my beacon." "Beacon?" Nexra exclaimed. "We scanned you." The human shrugged. "Quantum entanglement. No signal to detect." Panic rippled through the command network. Zoltak barked orders to secure the prisoners, but it was too late. The ship shuddered violently. Another hit, closer. As Zoltak turned to flee, the Russian human called after him, "Commander." "One question." Zoltak paused, against his better judgment. "Did you really think we wouldn't notice your scout ships? Did you think we wouldn't prepare?" The Russian smiled, the same terrifying smile, and said, "We've been planning for this day for generations." And as another tremor rocked the ship, Zoltak realized something with bone-deep certainty. They hadn't come to Earth to conquer a primitive species. They had walked straight into a trap, one set by the most dangerously underestimated creatures in the galaxy. The bridge of the Vortian flagship erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled between consoles, alarms howled like wounded beasts, and the main viewport flickered with damage warnings. The beautiful, orderly control chamber was dissolving into raw panic. Zoltak slammed a primary claw onto the emergency broadcast glyph. "Shields to full. Prepare jump drives." But the ship shuddered again, this time from inside. Internal sabotage. Fires were blooming along critical corridors, too many to be coincidence. Containment breach in plasma deck. A technician shrieked over the din. "Saboteurs!" Nexra hissed, her eyes flashing. "They've turned your own systems against you." Zoltak roared, vibrating the command deck's reinforced struts. "Find them. Now." On a side panel, a tactical overlay of the ship's decks blinked red. Movement signatures, erratic, swarming, traced through the engineering sectors. And at the center of the chaos were three blinking markers, the humans. "They are coordinating with the boarding parties," Nexra realized aloud. Zoltak bared his mandibles in rage. "Klovak, intercept them personally. Tear them apart if necessary." Klovak, slavering, stormed toward the lift with a team of enforcers. But the humans had moved faster. Inside engineering, the Russian planted explosives along the primary coolant feed. The Congolese fighter rerouted secondary power flows, disabling internal security barriers. And the American woman, grinning wildly, hacked the communication grid, broadcasting chaos across the Vortian fleet. To every nearby ship, the flagship's distress calls now sounded like orders to attack each other. Within minutes, Vortian ships outside Unity formation began firing upon one another. "They're fracturing our fleet command," Nexra shouted. Zoltak watched in horror as two dreadnoughts, each worth more than a Terran continent, exchanged blistering barrages, misidentifying each other as hostiles. It was more than sabotage. It was humiliation. A lifetime of Vortian arrogance crumbled in real time. On Earth's side, it wasn't much better, at least from the human's perspective. Commandant Rachel Duval, Supreme Commander of Earth's orbital forces, watched the real-time feeds from her command station inside Unity Citadel, still half-finished atop the Andes Mountains. Thousands of amateur spotters, university observatories, backyard tinkerers, all linked by an improvised mesh, had tracked the Vortian invasion fleet months before they breached intersystem space. And Earth had planned. Covert anti-orbital railguns. Sleeper drone swarms. Gravity mines seeded across the higher orbital lanes. But most importantly, psychological preparation. The biggest weapon humanity had wasn't firepower. It was that they knew they would be underestimated. Status. Duval barked. Phase 2 complete, her chief of operations, Major Tanaka, replied. Saboteurs active aboard Target Alpha. Mesh Ops report 42% of secondary fleet assets engaging in friendly fire. Casualty estimates? Duval asked grimly. Tanaka hesitated. Moderate, for now. But Vorshan self-correction protocols will activate soon. We have minutes before they realize. Duval exhaled slowly. Minutes to either break them completely or die trying. Then we press the advantage, she said. Deploy Protocol Lazarus. Tanaka's face paled slightly, but he nodded and keyed in the authorization codes. Across Earth's surface and high orbit, hundreds of black outlined shipping containers unlocked simultaneously. From within, scrapped together from decades of Black Ops projects, staggered a new kind of weapon. Humanity's first generation of exosuits designed for orbital boarding warfare. Not elegant, not sleek, but brutally effective. Soldiers in thick armored shells launched from mass drivers, arcing through atmosphere and vacuum alike. 1,000 guided meteors carrying the most dangerous payload the galaxy had yet encountered. An angry human with nothing left to lose. Back aboard the Vorshan flagship, Klovak finally caught up with the human prisoners near the main engine core. He roared in triumph, extending his venom claws, towering over the tiny bipeds. The American female merely grinned and tossed him a handheld detonator. Klovak instinctively caught it. The last thing he heard was the Russian whispering. Human gift. No refunds. The explosion ripped Klovak and 3 decks into nothingness. The human sprinted forward, scavenging weapons from fallen Vorshans with brutal efficiency. At that exact moment, the first Terran boarding pods smashed into the hull. Bulkheads buckled. Outer decks vented atmosphere. And the first waves of humanity's last stand poured into the bleeding heart of the Vorshan invasion fleet. Vax Lore, still watching from hidden satellites, murmured under his breath. They planned for this. My gods, they planned for everything. Nexa turned to Zoltak, horror plain in her otherwise emotionless gaze. This isn't a resistance, Grand Commander. Zoltak stared blankly as the humans breached another battleship's core. Then another. And another. This is an uprising, Nexa whispered. An uprising we gave them. Zoltak's claws trembled. The humans hadn't prepared for conquest. They had prepared for the moment the sky fell. And now, they were dragging the galaxy's apex predators down into the mud to fight them on human terms. Which meant the Vorshans were already losing. Zoltak retreated deeper into the command core, his guards forming a living shield around him. The sound of battle was everywhere, shrieking alarms, the crack of close-range plasma fire, the eerie silence of hull breaches sucking oxygen into the void. He could hardly believe it. In all the thousands of campaigns the Vorshan Empire had waged, they had crushed civilizations that wielded quantum lances, battled species with mind-hive fleets, reduced solar dynasties to ash. And here, on this forgotten blue world, their doom was being orchestrated by mammals wielding rail guns and grit. Status of the fleet? Zoltak demanded through gritted mandibles. Nexa answered without preamble. 57% compromised. Internal communications fractured. Friendly fire incidents escalating. Enemy forces, she spat the word like poison, have established control over 9% of our dreadnoughts. Zoltak's primary hearts hammered against his carapace. 9%. Already. And every second, that number would rise. In the chaos outside, the Terran boarding forces spread like wildfire. Their exosuits, battered, improvised, glitchy, nevertheless proved brutally effective in close quarters. Mag-clamp boots secured them to decks while recoil-absorbing bracers allowed humans to fire kinetic weapons far heavier than their body mass should permit. They were not graceful. They were not efficient. They were relentless. They moved through the Vorshan ships like blood through veins, clogging, rupturing, forcing clots that crippled vital systems. For every human who fell, 2 more seemed to appear. And they fought dirty. Plasma grenades were jury-rigged into flash flood EMPs. Welders became breach weapons. Sonic hammers pounded bulkheads into makeshift bunkers. One Marine platoon, cut off and low on ammo, lured Vorshan troops into an ambush by piping children's laughter recordings through the ventilation systems, exploiting the invaders' instinctive aversion to unpredictability. Humanity had weaponized its own chaos. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbit, the situation shifted even faster. Major Tanaka at Unity Citadel monitored the data feed, watching as the Vorshan fleet's organized assault dissolved into anarchic clusters. He reported to Commandant Duval, voice strained but victorious. Confirmed. 2 dreadnoughts have been recaptured intact. We estimate Earth forces now control approximately 20% of Vorshan mass within engagement envelope. Duval barely allowed herself a nod. And casualties? Tanaka's gaze darkened. Heavy, but within projections. In other words, catastrophic, but survivable. Exactly as planned. On the bridge of Unity's shield, Earth's first true orbital command carrier, Colonel Alicia Reyes coordinated the broader boarding operations. Secondary strike teams are disabling gravitic drives on targets Bravo 3 and Delta 7, Reyes reported. Tertiary teams moving to control life support nodes. AI packets flooding Vortian maintenance protocols. In the background, the captured Vortian AI nodes, jury-rigged by human coders, churned false maintenance alerts, scrambling enemy repair efforts. Reyes smiled grimly. They don't even realize they're fixing the wrong systems. Focus, Duval's voice crackled over the command net. Phase 3 commences in 5. Reyes understood. Phase 3 wasn't about survival anymore. Phase 3 was about breaking the Vortian will. Back aboard Zoltak's flagship, disaster accelerated. Nexera pressed a trembling finger against her control console. They're broadcasting. Broadcasting what? Zoltak growled. Everything, she said, her voice hollow. Across every Vortian ship, across every screen and hologram, Earth's forces had hijacked the feeds. And now they played footage. Humans, bloody and battered, fighting through impossible odds. Terran engineers manually rerouting coolant systems with bare hands. Medical corpsmen dragging wounded aliens, Vortians among them, to safety. Captured dreadnoughts flying human banners next to the Ark. Images the Vortian Empire's citizenry would see. Images their own soldiers would see. The message was simple, primal, and devastating. We are not your prey. We are your mirror. And we will never yield. Panic shattered what little cohesion remained among the Vortian fleet. Junior officers deserted their posts. Entire ship crews mutinied, sealing themselves in safe compartments to avoid Terran boarding squads. Fleet captains demanded withdrawal orders or fled independently. The once proud Vortian invasion dissolved into a rout. In the command core, Zoltak slumped against the main console, staring at the ruined holographic map of his forces. Broken, beaten, humiliated, by a species his advisors had called primitive. He turned slowly toward Nexera. Perhaps, he rasped, we were the primitives all along. Nexera said nothing. She simply watched Earth's forces surge forward across every projection, relentless as a rising tide. And at that moment, far below on Earth's surface, in the humming halls of Unity Citadel, Commandant Duval gave the final order. Broadcast offer of conditional surrender. Standard terms. Lay down arms. Return to Earth-controlled orbits. Cooperate and live. She paused. Resist, and learn why humanity has ruled every battlefield it has ever cared to fight. Zoltak sat motionless in the battered remains of the command chamber. Behind him, a bulkhead sparked and hissed, the last dying breath of a fleet once thought invincible. Across the Vortian armada, acceptance spread, slow, grudging, inevitable. Ship by ship, the surrender beacons blinked to life. At first, only the most damaged dreadnoughts. Then the carriers, their hangars gutted by human boarders. Finally, even the pride of the fleet, the cradle of ascendance, lowered its shields and broadcast Earth's Ark emblem alongside its own. Earth had not merely survived. Earth had won. And they had done it the only way humans ever won, by refusing to lose. The first formal surrender ceremony took place aboard Unity's shield. The surviving Vortian commanders, battered, humiliated, but alive, were escorted into the chamber by a joint honor guard, humans in burn-scarred exo-armor, crown vine soldiers, and Trinity kinetic troopers. At the center of the hall, Commandant Duval waited with Vax Lore beside her, their uniforms crisp despite the exhaustion etched into every line of their faces. When Zoltak limped forward, dragging his ruined pride behind him, Duval simply nodded once. Grand Commander, she said, using his title without mockery, you are offered the same terms as your subordinates. Cooperation. Repatriation. Dignity. For a long, ragged heartbeat, Zoltak said nothing. Then he bared his mandibles, not in defiance, but in something closer to grim acknowledgement, and bowed low. I yield, he rasped. Not to weapons, not to force, but to a reality no amount of pride could deny. Humanity had earned their place among the stars not by being better, but by being impossible to break. The aftermath unfolded like the slow unfurling of a new dawn. Earth moved quickly, faster than any galactic observers expected. Captured Vortian ships were not stripped or scrapped. Instead, they were repaired, often by joint human-alien teams, and integrated into a new fleet bearing the Ark emblem side by side with alien glyphs. Terran engineers reverse-engineered gravitic drives and energy shields, blending them with Earth's more brutalist technologies. New alloys, new weapon concepts, new doctrines bloomed overnight. Earth's first interstellar navy wasn't just a Terran force. It was a hybrid storm, a coalition born from blood, fire, and stubborn hope. Diplomatic waves followed military ones. Species who had once scoffed at humanity now scrambled to open embassies in Earth orbit. Trade delegations buzzed between lunar ports and Martian relay stations. Old rivalries fractured under the weight of Earth's momentum. And the Confederation, once a distant, indifferent body, suddenly found itself courting the one world they had once ignored. Not because they wanted to, but because now they had to. In a private briefing chamber deep within Unity Citadel, Vaxlor and Commandant Duval met once more, not as adversaries, but as architects. Your species will change everything, Vaxlor said quietly. Duval sipped her bitter coffee, human-made, Terran strong. We're not here to topple anything, Admiral. Just to survive. Vaxlor chuckled, a low, throaty sound. Survival is the first revolution. All the others follow. They stood together at the viewport, watching Earth turn slowly beneath them, oceans gleaming, cities pulsing, clouds curling in lazy swirls. A world that had been written off. A world that had seized its own future with bloodied hands and unbroken wills. Storm's just beginning, Duval said. Vaxlor nodded. And this time, you're the wind. Far beyond Earth's orbit, in the deep reaches of forgotten systems, other eyes watched. Not all species welcomed Earth's rise. Not all empires bowed to momentum. Plots whispered through the void, of retaliation, of containment, of annihilation. But those who knew humanity, truly understood what had just been unleashed, moved more carefully. Because they had seen the truth burned into the bones of space itself. You could underestimate humanity once. You would not survive doing it twice. And so the Ark sailed onward, patched together from alien hulls, Terran steel, and 1,000 stubborn dreams, carrying a storm Earth hadn't created, but would now ride wherever it roared. One ship, one storm, one future. And the stars would never be the same again. The first voyages of Earth's hybrid fleet began in silence. No grand broadcasts, no diplomatic parades. Just ships, old and new, patched and reforged, slipping into the void like wolves scenting new territory. Their mission was simple. Secure allies. Chart unexplored systems. And make it unmistakably clear that humanity was no longer confined to one fragile blue marble. Commandant Duval, promoted now to Fleet Marshal, oversaw these early expeditions personally. She didn't trust fragile treaties. She trusted actions. And she knew, as all the old soldiers knew, that victory wasn't truly won until the next storm was weathered. Out beyond the galactic arms, in the borderlands where law meant nothing and survival meant everything, humanity made its first allies. The Krenari, a nomadic species living in hollowed asteroid homes, offered trade routes and navigational charts in exchange for Terran agricultural tech. Then Kar, a once mighty race crippled by internal wars, sent envoys seeking to barter Starforge remnants for something rarer, Earth's stubborn spirit. Even isolated crown clans, once dismissive of the deaf Skydwellers, began sending whisper diplomats to negotiate joint research pacts. Every deal was messy. Every alliance stitched from necessity more than trust. And yet, stitched they were. A patchwork coalition began to coalesce around Earth, raw and perfect. But real. A coalition that terrified the old powers far more than any single superweapon. Because it wasn't loyalty born from domination. It was loyalty born from survival. Meanwhile, aboard Unity's Dawn, Earth's first deep space diplomatic flagship, Fleet Marshal Duval met with the new Ark Command Council. Humanity's first interstellar leadership body wasn't just human. Sitting beside Terran admirals were Krenari pathfinders, Trinity tacticians, Crown Dreamrites, and Vortian defectors, those who had survived the fall and chosen to build instead of mourn. There was no standing on ceremony. Disagreements flared hot and often, but they solved problems the way humans had solved problems since the dawn of fire. Argue. Test. Adapt. Move forward. When the Ark Command Council voted to send expeditions into the Shattered Rim, the galaxy's most lawless region, it wasn't with naive hope. It was with deliberate, calculated risk. Because humanity didn't fear chaos. Humanity thrived in it. In the months that followed, Earth's influence spread like wildfire. Mesh relays, cobbled from Terran satellite tech and crown vine weaves, connected forgotten worlds. Refugee fleets, long stranded between systems, accepted Ark protection. Smuggling clans, once scourges of the trade lanes, quietly signed letters of safe passage, enforced by orbital guns and faster Terran boarding teams. Every success bred new enemies. Pirate warlords fumed as their strongholds fell. Old Confederation bureaucrats muttered darkly in private halls, watching their influence drain into Earth's rising shadow. And somewhere deep beyond known space, far beyond even the Shattered Rim, an ancient empire stirred, disturbed by the noise, intrigued by the possibilities. They began to whisper a name in their cold black halls. Terrans. Not a curiosity anymore. A factor. A force. A storm. One evening aboard Unity's Dawn, after a long council session ended with an agreement to establish the first Ark frontier stations, Duval stood alone at the viewport. She watched as a human-built freighter escorted a Krenari seed ship into orbit, their drives flickering together like twin hearts. A small smile played at her lips. The future was messy, unpredictable, dangerous, just the way humanity liked it. Behind her, Vaxlor stepped quietly into the observation deck. "They fear you now," he said softly. "They should," Duval replied without turning. Vaxlor gave a low rumbling chuckle. "You've accomplished what 1,000 elder empires could not." Duval finally looked at him, tired but unbroken. "We didn't want conquest. Just a seat at the table. You didn't take a seat, Vaxlor said, voice full of admiration. You built a new table. They stood together in silence as the stars drifted by. One ship, one storm, one future. And it was growing bigger and louder with every heartbeat. The shattered rim loomed ahead like a wound in the galaxy. Broken planets, half-dead stars, pirate kingdoms, forgotten fleets, the place where empires had gone to die. It was here, amid the wreckage of 1,000 failed dreams, that humanity made its boldest move yet. Not conquest, not annihilation. Something far more dangerous. An invitation. From Unity's dawn, Fleet Marshal Duval transmitted a simple message across the rim's pirate channels, rogue mesh nodes, and ghost beacons. No more lords. No more slaves. Join the Ark. Build something new. Or stay here and rot. The response was chaos. Exactly what humanity expected. Some warbands attacked immediately. Others fled, unwilling to risk facing the unpredictable Terrans. But many, battered fleets, drifting stations, scavenger tribes listened. And for the first time in generations, the shattered rim stirred toward hope instead of violence. Not because Earth offered miracles, but because Earth offered something simpler. A fight worth winning and a future worth bleeding for. The first Ark frontier stations rose like stubborn weeds among the wreckage. Forged from salvaged wrecks and half-dead habitats, patched with human ingenuity and alien craftwork, they became hubs of raw, unfiltered life. Markets thrived. Workshops exploded with innovation. Messy, crowded, loud, but alive. Of course, not everyone welcomed the change. From the heart of the old Confederation, a remnant cabal plotted Earth's downfall. They unleashed mercenary fleets, faster, deadlier, fueled by desperation and hatred. They struck hard at the frontier stations, seeking to crush the newborn alliance before it could solidify. At Ark Station Kestrel, the alarm screamed as mercenary ships ripped out of slipspace, weapons hot. Fleet Marshal Duval, present by sheer chance on inspection, ordered immediate response. Not retreat. Not surrender. Counterattack. The battle raged for hours. Station defenses, still incomplete, fell quickly. But Earth's strength was never in walls or guns. It was in people. Dockworkers grabbed rifles. Engineers turned pressure valves into plasma traps. Merchant ships rammed hostile corvettes with jury-rigged kinetic shields. One storm. One ship. And when the first Arcfire-class destroyers, human-built, alien-enhanced, dropped into re-space to reinforce the station, the mercenaries broke. Ark Station Kestrel stood battered but unbeaten. And across the rim, Earth's legend grew. The final message from the surviving mercenary captain summed it up best, broadcast live before his drive core overloaded. You can't fight them. You can't scare them. They're the storm. In the years that followed, the Ark expanded. Earth's hybrid fleet became the glue binding shattered regions into something new. And the galaxy, ancient, cynical, tired, finally saw humanity not as invaders, not as primitives, but as the seed of the next age. An age of chaos, yes. An age of storms. But also an age of growth, of rebuilding, of stubborn, endless, impossible hope. Back aboard Unity's dawn, Fleet Marshal Duval stood one last time at the viewport, watching another new station ignite its first power core in the distance. Beside her, Vaxlor, now ambassador-at-large of the Ark Alliance, tilted his head in thought. Do you think they understand? He asked softly. Who? Duval replied. The old powers. The ones still hiding behind walls. The ones plotting in the dark. Duval smiled faintly. They will. She sipped her coffee. And by then, it'll be too late. Beyond the glass, the stars spun, vast, endless, waiting. One ship. One storm. One future. Still unfinished. And just getting started. Stay with us if you want to see how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe.